Hello, my name is Thaís Braga, and together with my colleague Sandra Marinho, we present the paper Q&A about the Day of Fire in the Amazon, Critical Analysis of the Portuguese-Brazilian Journalistic Discourse. This work is one of the results of the doctoral thesis that I defended a few months ago at the Communication and Society Research Center in Portugal and has the support of the Foundation for Science and Technology. This is the paper outline. The presentation of the Day of Fire in the Amazon, the research question, the methodological procedures, the textual structures analyzed, the results and discussion, the main conclusions, and the references. Day of Fire in the Amazon refers to the allegedly criminal forest fires set up by a group of farmers in the state of Pará in the Brazilian Amazon on August 10, 2019, under the encouragement of President Jair Bolsonaro. This action started a series of fires that extended to other Brazilian biomes like Cerrado and Pantanal. The alleged environmental crime was a result from the various measures to encourage deforestation implemented by the Brazilian president, like the weakening of environmental inspection and control bodies, like IBAMA and ICMBio. Besides, Day of Fire in the Amazon was the cause of a diplomatic crisis between the Brazilian government and the European Union, mainly due to the threat of French President Emmanuel Macron not to ratify the trade agreement between the Europe and the Southern Common Market, Mercosur, as well as the attempt to boycott the importation of Brazilian products from areas of deforestation. So, from this case, it was asked, what were the journalistic discourses produced about the Day of Fire in the Amazon? Discourses are here understood as complex, specific, and social-cognitive communicative events because they build a representation not only of the text, but also of the social context. Particularly, journalistic discourses are produced around structures and strategies as well as relating to institutional arrangements to subtly influence the audience's interpretation. In dialogue with communication sciences, we understand that journalistic discourse as a social construction that results from production process centered on the newsroom, whose work environment forms the routines and limitations for professional activity. Therefore, according to the established deadlines and competitive pressures, a system of practices is formed, repeated daily to structure and organize routines, as well as to determine what to do. Also, because of routines, the journalist demonstrates an intuitive and effective ability to sort the flow of information, that is, to detect its value, newsworthiness. Hence, classification routines and automatisms have a practical sense linked to experience to quickly hierarchize the chaos of information. First, it is important to clarify that this work is a case study because it explores and investigates a contemporary real-life phenomenon through detailed contextual analysis of a limited number of events or conditions and their relationships. As an event, the Day of Fire in the Amazon was part of a social-cultural environment and gained a new dimension as it was described and narrated by the media, although the event was not limited to representation or media reporting. And there is no single way to conduct case studies. It was decided to analyze the phenomenon through the journalistic discourse. The case was observed between August 2019 and September 2020. The Portuguese language newspapers Público Portugal and Folha de São Paulo Brazil were selected for the observation and analysis of the phenomenon, as both are references in their countries and have institutional and market similarities. Hence, a corpus was formed via non-probabilistic sampling by typical cases, with 61 texts from Público and 60 texts from Folha de São Paulo. More broadly, this set of texts was analyzed in previous works. Here, only 2 texts published on August 22nd in the Portuguese newspaper and on August 23rd in the Brazilian newspaper are examined. In addition to being published at practically the same time, both texts are structured in the format of questions and answers, usually called explainers, which represents a frequent strategy of news construction to attract the attention of the audience. As a technique instrument of data collection, direct observation and indirect observation were adopted, that is, semi-structured interviews with the editorial secretary of Folha de São Paulo, the journalist Vinícius Mota, the university professor and one of the founders of Público, the journalist Joaquim Fidalgo, and the journalist Ricardo Cabral Fernandes, who worked at Público between June 2019 and August 2020. In this paper, the content of the interviews was not analyzed, but the information provided by the interviewees helped in the perception of the social-historical ambience of Público and Folha de São Paulo. According to Van Dijk, critical discourse analysis was operationalized, focusing on the way in which journalistic discourses structures can influence specific mental models and generic representations of the audience, as well as how beliefs can be manipulated. Thus, the headline, the subheadline, and the 10 questions, that is, the explainers of each text, were analyzed. Just to show you, here's a screenshot of Público. In red, the elements that were analyzed, and the screenshot of Folha de São Paulo. The textual structures are here translated and were organized, as you guys can see in this table. The main results showed that both Público's and Folha de São Paulo's texts were published more than 10 days after the day of fire in the Amazon. Surely, the Brazilian newspaper began to highlight the case on August 14th in different sections, but it's singular that the same discursive strategy of questions and answers was used practically at the same time by both newspapers. It is possible that this particular interest was sparked by French President Emmanuel Macron's tweet, which pointed to the international crisis in the lungs of the world, which is a misguided idea because the function of the Amazon rainforest is to fix carbon dioxide. This delay of the two newspapers in trying to understand the case evokes the identity and isolation of the people who live in the forest, features that place the Amazon in a past and even folkloric time, given the association of distancing space with distancing time. At Público, the distance is relatively understandable since it is indeed a foreign country. However, at Folha de São Paulo, there is a dissociation, even though the case took place within the same country. According to the information given by the interviewees, the audience of the Brazilian newspaper is not in the Amazon, so it talks about the forest but not for the people who live in the forest. Rather, it is imported to dialogue with national and international leaders. Also from the interviewees, it was known that the case was highlighted by Público because, as happened in the European summer, many journalists were on vacation and there were no other events in the Portuguese society that demanded the attention of the public authorities. The forest fires that sometimes take place in Portugal, such as those in Pedrógão Grande in 2017, do not resemble the day of fire, as Brazil and Portugal have different climatic conditions. In Portugal, the excessive heat is directly related to the fires, but in Brazil, the cause of these fires in the Amazon were supposedly criminal. Público highlighted that forest fires in the Amazon had been under control for the previous 8 years. It referred to the Queimadas program of the National Institute for Space Research, Inc., to indicate the data. This is particularly important as in some situations, Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro has denied the severity of the fires in the Amazon and given false information about the biome. When explained where the Amazon is located, Público reinforced the association of the biome with rivers and the forest and its political categorization. However, it did not explore the socio-economic and cultural aspects of the Amazon, which concerns the more than 28 million people who live in the Amazon rainforest. The Portuguese newspaper also tried to determine a beginning for the day of fire, however, it failed to investigate and added some information about the case. Público highlighted that not all fires are illegal in Brazil and that environmental problems in the Amazon comes from previous governments, such as exploitation of hydroelectric dams encouraged by former President Lula. Finally, it refers to the Amazon Fund, which reserves donations for foreign countries such as Germany and Norway to carry out biodiversity conservation projects. On the other hand, Folha de São Paulo highlighted the importance of the Amazon to the global climate and that the biome is not the lung of the world, as French President Macron had said. When a newspaper mentioned myths and doubts about the Amazon, it showed that, in general, the biome is still not well understood. This confirms the previous premise of the isolation and identity of the Amazon, as if the political and economic centers of Brazil were, to some extent, also foreigners. The Brazilian newspaper denied the possibility of the Amazon being an international territory, despite its importance for curbing climate change. Here it is important to realize that, in a global condition, the Amazon represents a border of preservation for the survival of planet Earth. There is a great international concern with the advance of livestock, soybean monoculture, timber, and mineral extraction. But the countries that stand out in defending the preservation of the Amazon forest are contradictory. For example, Germany, whose energy policy is based on coal, and Norway, which is the largest shareholder of mining company Hydro, which is involved in illegal proceedings for contamination of rivers in the municipality of Barcarena in the state of Pará. Folha de São Paulo explored the dimensions that make the Amazon the largest tropical forest in the world, reinforcing the association of the biome with its natural features. It was mentioned that indigenous reserves are part of the Amazon. This point is also important as they are seriously threatened by President Jair Bolsonaro, who wants to change their boundaries to allow mining exploration in the Amazon. Finally, the Brazilian newspaper also referred to Impedata and showed that Brazilians, that is, the population of southern and southeastern Brazil, are also responsible for the environmental problems facing the Amazon. Here, the isolation of the Amazon mentioned earlier is confirmed. To conclude, we realize that different meanings were produced by the speech of Público and Folha de São Paulo. This was the result of its journalistic practices and routines, as well as the social, historical, and political institutional context in which each newspaper is. Although the inferences cannot be generalized, the clues found here point to the beliefs and values produced by the Luso-Brazilian society. The association with the natural features of the biome, rivers and forests, predominate in the discourses of the two newspapers. This shows that they recognize the importance of the Amazon to curb climate change. That is, there is value in this kind of information. However, it does not seem that they are willing to invest specifically in the coverage of the Amazon beyond the infrastructure already available. One of the limitations of this study refers to the impossibility of interviewing the authors of the selected text, to ask them about the conditions of the discursive production and to debate the results of our analysis. Certainly, the journalist's vision would bring a new layer of understanding and interpretation to the discursive productions on the Day of Fire in the Amazon. In the future, we hope to confront this analysis with other research on the case to obtain a better context and social understanding of the phenomenon and the journalistic discourse about the phenomenon. Here are the references used in this presentation. Thank you so much for the attention. I'm available to clarify any doubts. Hope to see you sometime in the future.